Alright, stay with me for a minute. Showing a zero Forma build for weapons that operate on synergy can be unhelpful, because some weapons need more investment to work. For example, a hybrid weapon with only the crit half or the status half of its build will appear to be weaker than a pure crit or pure status weapon at first, but is almost always actually stronger when the build is fleshed out. So I think it's better to show you the maxed out build within reason and explain the process behind it. Then you can decide if you like the gear enough to invest in it, and if you like it but don't want to invest as much, you get an idea of how to make it cheaper by hearing and seeing what it's good at. And some different types of gear are better or worse with less investment. As I was mentioning before, a pure crit or a pure status weapon may gain most of its power with zero Forma, or hybrid weapons won't be as good, and that would come to light if you saw the full build. Showing a zero Forma build doesn't really save you Forma or cater to newer players on its own because it gives you less information. Instead, the solution is to help you decide on something you'll be happy with by demonstrating the thought process behind some given build logic. The old give you a fish versus teach you to fish thing. My method is to teach you to fish. But if that makes sense, I was thinking it might be even more helpful to show you my thought process behind investing in a given weapon for a video in the first place. After all, as a person who makes videos about a game, I play differently than I otherwise might so that I have access to anything I think you might find interesting. And because of Digital Extreme's Warframe partner Day 1 Access program, which I'm very thankful to make use of, I get new stuff except for primes as soon as it comes out, so I end up evaluating every single new weapon to see if I might have something to show you. Now, I don't personally like all of it, and I'm under no obligation to say anything about it or to say good things about it, but that type of video is very highly requested, and it's usually pretty easy and fun to make since I've done it so many times. Here we are. We have the topic of our little miniseries, the Galvacord. This came with the Profit Taker update, and I received it for free as part of Day 1 Access, along with the Exodus, video in the description for that, and the Plinks and some other stuff. Initially, I didn't like it very much. It's slow, we already have access to several whips with good status chance, and its crit stats are janky. But it does have innate electricity alongside a slash-focused physical damage spread, which would be very nice for condition overload. Still, whips aren't very combo friendly and function mostly on their high range slide attacks, and I like combos, so I had trouble imagining myself enjoying the Galvacord and didn't initially put any work into it. After a while though, I got to thinking about how the Galvacord didn't fit my normal objections for a weapon. Usually, I critique new weapons for filling a niche that's already full, like almost all dual swords being hybrid weapons with sometimes weird but ultimately pretty interchangeable stats, and less extreme stuff like the Plinks being a pure crit pistol with functionally infinite ammo when we already have the Nell, which gives you bonuses for having those two qualities. The Galvacord, though, does kind of fill a niche among whips. The Atarax is your hybrid thing, okay. The Scoliac is a bit lacking in design space, but is basically an investment option, a better Atarax if you have a crazy Riven for it. And the Secure Electa is pure elemental and much faster than the others. The Galvacord, then, is taking some elements from each. Compared to its fellows, it's much better suited for condition overload, and it retains some strengths from the others, like elemental damage, a focus on slash damage even despite that, and the Whip family's signature cleavy slide attacks. My point is that given an infinite, or not infinite, but a large number of different loadouts with different needs, there is potential use for the Galvacord. It does do things that its competition doesn't. And every loadout is its own unique situation, even if some types of players don't prefer to swap things in and instead use a few favorite weapons. Every time you make a loadout, no matter what kind of player you are, there are things that will be better or worse depending on the other things you picked, just because of usability, what you want given your other options. And it's at this stage that I thought about my Mesa loadout, which you've been seeing in the background this whole time. So I use Secure Electa on that Mesa, the build you're seeing on screen. It's built for healing return with a lot of status output, and the idea is that you can heal up really fast by doing slide attacks without being in melee range, because Shatter Shield doesn't defend you in melee range. You don't have to get that close to enemies. If there's just a lot of enemies around, you can just quickly do a few slide attacks, and you heal up very fast. It's quite effective, and it's fun too. A different little option to intersperse a little melee gameplay in between those big bursts of Peacemaker gameplay. Galvacord could be slower, but provide a greater spread of statuses, which might mean that on the third or fourth or fifth slide attacks, which would happen less quickly, you would heal for more. And if you were getting attacked a lot and you were really about to die, that might matter. And it would also give you greater killing power. In the footage you've been seeing the whole time, I didn't really need healing, even though the enemies were pretty high level. Some of that was due to Magus Elevate, my operator arcane that heals me, has the potential to heal me every time I go back into my Warframe. But adding killing power to my healing whip and maybe even making it better for healing at the cost of some speed might be worth it. That might be better. On the other hand, the Galvacord has a lot to gain from Arcane Strike. That's an arcane that allows you to increase the attack speed of a melee weapon, and it's really nice on weapons that are really too slow. Instead of using 2 mod slots on the melee weapon to run Berserker and Prime Fury or whatever, you can just run Berserker and then run Arcane Strike instead. The weapon can still run its normal hybrid build, and it loses the drawback of having slower attack speed, as long as your Warframe doesn't want arcane slots so much. But Mesa, I find, rather does. She has some options she's interested in for arcanes, so maybe this would be better suited to a loadout that wanted arcane slots less, and there are frames like that. Zephyr is a good example of a frame that, due to her absolute defense from turbulence, she doesn't really care about a lot of the big things you often get from arcanes, like armor from Arcane Guardian, or bullet jump speed from Arcane Consequence, since she already has her flying stuff. Zephyr doesn't really care that much about having arcane space, so if you want to use your arcane slots to make your weapons stronger or rebuff a weakness they have, Zephyr's really good at that. Mesa, not terrible at that, but not as good. Peacemaker can benefit a lot from arcane velocity, for example. So maybe that's a weight that makes it not as good with Mesa. And Secure Electa is more standalone, so maybe that's better. And this build also feels a bit bloated, the build that I'm using for the Secure Electa. There's not a whole lot of space, so if there's anything else I wanted to add to get more stuff, I don't feel like I have all that much space for it, so maybe I would want to run a loadout that didn't value Xeneric as much, so I could run Naramon Power Spike, get Combo Counter Decay, and drop Drifting Contact to free up a slot. Anyway, you can see that as soon as we get into this situation, once we set the stage, it's a whole can of worms. It's Pandora's box of different possibilities for weapons, just based on evaluating whether the weapon does anything of value in the first place, whether there is anything the weapon is striving toward, whether there's anything unique that the weapon can provide. And if there is, then potentially there might be something you're looking for. This is essentially how I decide whether I'm going to invest in something. If it has a unique quality, then it might be the thing that I want in one of my loadout videos, or just to show someone, or in general, I might want to recommend it. And if it doesn't, while it might be good, if it is just worse than an option we already have, like I feel the Plinx is not entirely just worse, it does have a few unique strengths, but it mostly feels to me like a worse Nell. I don't see why I would use the Plinx over the Nell, and so I don't think it's worth investing in, and so I'm unlikely to keep that around. I might get rid of it. I'm not the type of player who keeps everything. I usually keep the things I think have a build niche, and that's why I've decided to explore the Galvacord. So it's a bit borderline. I think the Galvacord is a great example for this purpose because I'm not certain that it's actually worth it. I'm not that confident it's going to be better for my Mesa's loadout, but we'll find out. And then the next 2 videos, you'll see me building it out, testing it in that niche, and then we'll see how it is. We can decide for ourselves what is it? And then you don't have to do it yourself. You can say, well, this weapon seems a little iffy to me. I agree or I disagree. I'm excited about it, but I want to know what's coming. And I've then shown you pretty comprehensively what the impact that weapon has on your arsenal in general, just on your account. What does it do to have that weapon on your account instead of just getting the new thing? That's the beginning of our little mini series on the logic behind why I choose different weapons to own or to invest in, even though I get everything from day one access. Oftentimes people will say, well, then why don't you have X, Y, or Z? And I'll say, because I don't see a niche for it. I don't really know why. I don't even really know why they made that, I say to myself. But I know a lot of the time it's, with the dual swords thing, I suspect it's that their market research shows that dual swords are popular. Dual swords are cool, and that's probably why they make a lot of them. So sure, it's not like I can't conceive of a reason, but the point is I don't keep all those things around just because they're maybe some reason for them to be put into the game. I try to show things that I feel like there's an express reason to show. Even if you have everything in the game, I think to myself, would you want this as well? Thanks for watching. If you're here at the end of the video, you know what to do, and I'll see you on the other side.